morning to all. I am very glad. I am very glad to introduce our today guest speaker, Dr. Harsha NM. Sir has completed his UG and PG from JSS Ayurved Medical College, Mysore. Sir has passed Red Cross examination conducted by the Karnataka State Red Cross branch. Sir has identified as the state level scholar at the National Talent Search examination by the DSERT and was awarded scholarship for 2 years. Sir has attended Nadi Vijnana conducted at the Hindus Valley Ayurvedic Center, Mysore. He has attended training of Namburi Passport Test conducted by the Academy of Ayurveda, Vijayawada. Sir has also attended Lekhanusandhanam, a course on manuscriptology. Sir also attended many CME, ROTPS and TTT training to teachers program in various institutes all over the India. Sir has numerous presentations to his name at national and international seminar at the various part of the India. Sir has published 3 articles in international journals and 2 articles in national journals. Sir has translated Rasayoga Shatakam to English with commentary. Sir has translated the book The Sanjeevani Samrajyam, which has been written on Sanjeevani Vati. His research work are self-financed research on characterization of Parada Yogas with special reference to Rasasindura through scanning electron microscopy. He has an organizing secretary for Arogyavardhini 2012. He was a treasurer at Kumara Anveshana 2012, 2014 and also research person various seminars. With this, I conclude the brief introduction of today's speaker and I request Dr. Harsha NM sir to continue the session. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope I'm audible to you all.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, today's topic which has been given to me is Drugs and Cosmetics Act. And let us try to understand why an act is required and what is the significance of that. And what is the basic difference between act and a rule? Because we see Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and Drugs and Cosmetics Rules 1945. We'll look into that in detail. Give me a moment. I'm trying to share the screen.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, your network issue is there, sir. It is showing as a yellow color signal, sir. Your audio is also a little bit disturbing, sir.
Is it?
Little bit audio is disturbing, sir.
Yeah, let me check. Let me check. I'm checking.
Oh.
Yeah, there seems to be a problem with the network in my end itself. Can we join after about 5 minutes? If you would give me about 5 minutes, I'll try to fix this up and join.
Sir, now audio is clear, but little bit interruption.
Yeah, that is why I'll try to fix this problem. Probably due to the heavy rains here and cloudy weather now. Probably the connection is not proper.
Okay, sir.
Can you just give me 5 minutes so that
Okay,
I
sir.
can get back to you?
Okay, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Clear the amendment?
Sir, it is clear now, sir. You can continue with PPT, sir.
Okay. Extremely sorry for the technical problems. No, these are unexpected problems. Okay, I'm trying to screen share. Screen share. Screen share. एक मिनट. एक मिनट. Okay. I think we are ready now. Thank you. So what we have seen is the Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and Drugs and Cosmetics Rules 1945. These two things go hand in hand. And many times we, as students of Ayurveda, rather students away from the students of law, we are put to discomfort. What is the difference between an act and a rule? Let me go into that. Yes. How different are the acts and rules? See, we all know that an act is a bill passed by both houses of the parliament and finally approved by the president. Okay. And when some bill, recently we know that Citizenship Amendment Act was passed. Before it was passed, it was called CAB, which was a bill, and after it was passed, it was called CAA. The bill became an act. Okay. So this is primary in nature. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Is it okay, madam?
Sir, you can continue, sir.
So is it okay?
Okay, sir. It
Okay,
is
fine.
clear and audible.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is about an act. And next we have something like rules. Rules is a set of do's and don'ts. Okay, which are defined, which are actually based on the act itself, on the same lines of the act. These rules are framed, and these are changed from time to time. Okay, suppose we frame a certain rule, and after some time we come to know that there is practical difficulty in this. So then what we do is we start making some amendments. Clear? So these rules actually help in governing the act, basically. And the rules are there to make the parent act function efficiently. That is most important. Why at all we should have an act. Okay, and these are secondary in nature. Let us know about history. Why? What is the historical significance or the historical background of Drugs and Cosmetics Act? Now, originally it was known as the Drugs Act 1940. Okay, so this act was prepared in accordance with the recommendations of Chopra Committee formed in 1930 or 1931. Okay, and why this Chopra Committee was formed? This is also an interesting story. Okay, after the First World War, the whole of India was flooded with a lot of substandard medicines. Okay, and we had, we at that time we did not have any regulating body to check the quality of the drugs which are coming into India. Clear? So that was the reason the then British Indian government thought, and it started a body. It was intending to establish a body which would control the quality of drugs. Clear? So for that, before that, we need to have a ground report, isn't it? To get the ground report, it was asked Chopra Committee to find a or to file a report based on their findings. Clear? So after that, after the recommendations were approved, this act, the Drugs Act, was passed in the year 1940. The related drugs and cosmetics, not cosmetics, the related drugs rules was passed in 1945. Then. Okay, it took 5 years for us, for authorities then, to frame according rules. Okay, basically we have the skeleton of how to maintain the quality of drugs. But based on that skeleton, we need to also develop. Okay, so for that, it took about 5 years, and the drugs rules was passed in 1945. Okay, next in the year 1964, well, this is more important for us. The act was amended, and in that amendment, ASU drugs were involved. Okay, ASU means basically Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani drugs. Okay, Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani drugs. So henceforth, we are going to have this term ASU drugs in our talk. Okay. So in the year 1964, the act was rather amended to include Ayurvedic drugs, for us Ayurvedic drugs. Okay, and since then it has seen about 11 major amendments so far. It was the first amendment was in 1960, then it was in 62, 64, where 64 in which the Ayurvedic dimension was given to this act, and then it was in 72, 82, 86, 95, 2008, 17, and 18, and finally in 2019. Okay, so this is a link by copying which you may get more detail on this. Okay, right. Now, what are the objectives of this act? The objectives, the first and the foremost objective is to regulate the import, manufacture, distribution, and sale of drugs and cosmetics through licensing. See, each word is very, very important. You cannot do away with any word here. Okay, to regulate. Regulation is very important. After all, why are we having an act? We need to regulate something, isn't it? So we need to regulate the import of drugs. We need to regulate the manufacture of drugs. We also need to regulate the distribution of drugs. Once the drugs are manufactured, they also need to be distributed in the market, isn't it? So you need to have certain parameters, certain laws, or certain specified ways in which you're going to distribute, isn't it? You cannot sell drugs like over-the-counter medicines, what OTC, which are called in short. for OTC, a doctor's prescription is not required. Whereas for most of the drugs, a prescription is very, very necessary. Okay. And yes, after distribution, sale is another aspect, isn't it? Sale is another aspect. So all these things are regulated. Okay, we need to have certain rule which can regulate these things. Apart from that, we need to see that the drugs are manufactured and the drugs are sold by qualified persons only. Okay, manufacturing of drugs should also be done by qualified persons. Distribution should also be done by qualified persons, qualified in their field of medicine distribution, and also sale of drugs. Okay, so that is also important, because see, that is the counter in which the drug or your product reaches the end consumer. So that is where responsibility doubles actually, isn't it? Responsibility actually doubles. You cannot freely go on distributing some very precious drugs or some drug which is having a lot of toxic issues, isn't it? So for that, you need to have qualified persons for sale as well. Okay. And yes, in short, you can say to prevent substandard in drugs. So the standard needs to be maintained, and to regulate the manufacture and sale of Ayurvedic, Siddha, and Unani drugs. Okay. So finally, to establish the Drugs Technical Advisory Board and the Drugs Consultative Committees for allopathic and allied drugs and cosmetics. Even in Ayurveda, we also have Ayurvedic Drugs Technical Advisory Board. Okay. Now, this act gives us some definitions. These definitions are quite important, especially for postgraduate students who are dealing with Shastra and Bhaishajya Kalpana, who are dealing with especially manufacture of drugs, preparation of drugs. These things should be learned. Well, according to me, these things should be learned by heart. Okay. So drugs, what are drugs? See, anything which is intended for internal or external use of human beings or animals, and all those substances intended to be used for diagnosis, treatment, mitigation, prevention of any disease or disorder in human beings or animals, and including the preparations applied on human body for the purpose of repelling insects like mosquitoes, isn't it? You also have mosquito repellents, isn't it? So that also comes under drugs. So this is the definition of drugs. And next, what is the definition of cosmetics? See, any article intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, or sprayed on, or introduced into, or otherwise applied to the human body, or any part thereof, for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering the appearance, and includes any article intended for use as a component of a cosmetic. Okay, a drug. We have discussed about the drug as such. We have also discussed about something which is used as a cosmetic, and anything which forms a component of a cosmetic also can be considered in this group. Next, we have definition of misbranded drug. What is a misbranded drug? See, any drug having less quality or having any drug which does not meet the ethical values, we commonly say that's a spurious drug. Okay, rather, spurious drug also has a definition. This we need to understand. Okay, see, here, first of all, misbranded drug. What is a misbranded drug? Any drug which is so colored or coated or powdered or polished that damage is concealed. Okay, if there is any damage to a particular tablet and you are covering it, you're covering the damage that is called as misbranded drug. Or if it is made to appear of better or greater therapeutic value than it really is, isn't it? And the second point is if it is not labeled in the prescribed manner. And labeling of the drugs we are going to discuss in detail later on. Okay. And next we have adulterated drug. For adulterated drugs, what are adulterated drugs? If the drug consists in whole or in part of any filthy, putrid, or decomposed substance. Okay, any substandard medicine or a substandard ingredient, if is added, or filthy or waste product is added to that, if it has been prepared, packed, or stored under insanitary conditions, whereby it may have been contaminated with filth, or whereby it may have been rendered injurious to health. So this is what we are concerned about. What are we making drugs? I mean, why are we making drugs? We are preparing drugs only to help people keep their health, isn't it? On the other hand, if people are getting diseased because of our own medicines, well, it has no meaning, isn't it? So that is why we need to consider these things, and especially here comes contamination of water, contamination of air, contamination of the premises. All these things should be taken care of in order to prevent your drug from labeled as an adulterated drug. Okay. And if its container is composed in whole or in part of any poisonous or deleterious substance, which may render the contents injurious to health. Okay, this is also needs to be thought of. Nowadays, we are using plastic containers. Okay, PVC containers are being used. What if you use a substandard, variant of plastic which is injurious to the health, and that is used for packing of drugs? Naturally, that should not be done, isn't it? In order to prevent that, you need to take care accordingly. Next, we have spurious drugs. If it is imported under a name which belongs to another drug, it becomes spurious. Okay. Like for example, you need some ashwagandha for your preparation, for some preparation in your pharmacy, and you are importing that under a different name. So that becomes spurious. And if it is an imitation of or a substitute of another drug, or resembles another drug in a manner likely to deceive, okay, likely to confuse the consumer. By looking at the consumer will be confused whether it is the real product or not. Okay, so such drugs are also called as spurious drugs. And in relation to any drug or cosmetic, it includes any process or part of a process for making, altering, ornamenting, finishing, packing, labeling, breaking up, or otherwise treating or adopting any drug or cosmetic with a view to its sale or distribution. Well, the line is quite long, but it just says if you are doing any unethical thing to promote its sale, well, that becomes a spurious drug. Here, I think everyone is clear with these things. If you're clear with these things, we'll look into the other aspects of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Any questions? Hello?
Hello, sir. Questions will be discussed later, sir. After
Okay.
completion of your
Okay, fine. So I'll just move on. Okay. we are going to see the overview of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act and rules. If you look at the book of Drugs and Cosmetics Act, you go to a market, bookstore, and purchase book of Drugs and Cosmetics Act, it will be quite huge, and you'll be confused what to study and what to not. Okay, and only for that reason, I'm trying to put that in very simple terms. Okay, the first part of the book will be Act, will be dealing with or discussing about the Act, and the second part will be discussing about the rules. Okay, rules part of it will be quite huge, whereas Act will be less in number, or it will be small in size. Okay, so this Act basically has 6 chapters. Though the book is quite huge, you need to understand it has only 6 chapters and 2 schedules. Okay, and these 2 schedules are also quite important. I'm coming to that. The first schedule is very, very important for us Ayurvedic practitioners. Okay, now next comes the rules. In the rules, we have about 26, more than 26 parts and 39 schedules, including those which have been omitted. Some amendments have been done, and when you amend something, you add a new schedule, and in the same manner, you also delete a schedule. Okay, if you consider that this schedule is not relevant. Okay, so these schedules have been named from A to Y. Now, what about the Act? In the Act, Chapter 1 discusses only about the introductory aspects of it. And the second chapter deals with the Drugs Technical Advisory Board, the Central Drugs Laboratory and Drugs Consultative Committees, okay, DCC and DTAB, which is one of the objectives of this Act. And the third chapter deals with import of drugs and cosmetics. The fourth chapter deals with manufacture, sale, and distribution of drugs and cosmetics. And we have, we can see here, okay, I said there are 6 chapters, but there are only 5. That is because we have chapter 4A as an independent chapter. And this chapter 4A deals with provisions relating to Ayurvedic, Siddha, and Unani drugs. Okay, and chapter 5 will be miscellaneous. Here. And in schedule 1A will be Ayurvedic and Siddha systems. Schedule 1B will be dealing with Unani systems. And schedule 2 will deal with standards to be complied with by imported drugs manufactured for sale, stocked, or exhibited for sale or distributed. Okay, this essentially deals with some standards. Now coming to the rules, there are 26 plus, more than 26 parts, as I told you earlier, but I'm trying to put only the relevant ones for us. Part 16 deals with manufacture for sale of Ayurvedic or Unani drugs or ASU drugs. Let me just simplify that like that. And part 16A deals with approval of institutions for carrying out tests on ASU drugs and raw materials used in their manufacture or on behalf of licensees for manufacture for sale of ASU drugs. And next part 17, deals with labeling, packing, and limit of alcohol in Ayurvedic or Unani drugs. See, this is quite important because this is a short answer, very, very popular or very favorite question to be asked in the examination for short answers. And if you are intending for getting through or intending to get through any competitive exams, then essentially this is a very, very potential topic. Okay, because it says the limit of alcohol in all the drugs. And next we have part 18, which deals with government analysis. In other words, who is going to analyze or who is going to inspect ASU drugs or drugs being manufactured, or after manufacture, who is going to analyze the quality of the drugs. Okay, part 18 is going to deal with this. And now we have part 19, which deals with standards of ASU drugs. Here. And coming to schedules of rules, mind you. First, our Schedule A deals with forms. These forms are quite necessary, because if you are opening a pharmacy and you want to manufacture some medicine, you need to have a license. Okay, there is a licensing authority, and from there you need to get a license for manufacture of a particular drug. Okay, so for applying, there is a prescribed form. Yeah, so these forms are discussed here. You know, for license, for loan license, for no, not only that, even the approval and the license, grant of license will also be in the prescribed manner, and that is also there. Okay, and Schedule E deals with the poisonous substances under Ayurvedic, Siddha and Unani drug or systems of medicine. And yes, very, very important, this one, Schedule T, which deals with good manufacturing practices of Ayurvedic drugs. Okay, and as I told you, forms, there are different forms and prescribed forms. See, Form 24D is for application for grant of a license or renewal of a license. Okay, if you are granted a license, it doesn't mean that lifelong you are going to manufacture the same drug. No, you're going to renew that. Okay, and for renewal, you need to apply afresh. And for applying again in the same form, you're going to apply. Okay, and Form 24D is application. Form 24E is application again for grant or renewal of a loan license. Okay, what is a loan license? This is quite interesting. Suppose I have a formula and I am interested to market some drug. But realistically speaking, I don't have money, or I don't have the infrastructure, or I don't have the resources to prepare or to manufacture. Whereas my friend has them, but he doesn't have the formula. Okay, so in that case, what we do is we collaborate and I apply for a license. Okay, I apply for a license, and this license, this kind of license is called as loan licensing, in which I am going to get the drug manufactured by some person, some authorized person, and I'm going to manufacture it. Clear? Clear? And 25D deals with license to manufacture or sale of Ayurvedic drugs. What is the difference? 24D is application and 25D is the license. Okay, it is the format of the license. And again, 25E is format of the license for loan license, for loan license. Okay. And from 26D is the certificate of renewal of license for manufacture of sale for ASU drugs. And from 26E, it is again certificate of renewal of loan license. And Form 26E1 is certificate of GMP to manufacture ASU drugs. This certificate is very, very important in today's perspective. This certificate is very important for you to prepare or for you to manufacture any drug, because if you have GMP certification, then your products will be valued much higher than those who don't have it. Form 40 is all about application for grant or renewal of approval for carrying out tests on ASU drugs. So this deals with quality control. Okay. Or used in the manufacture thereof on behalf of licensees or manufacturer for sale of ASU drugs. Okay. In other words, this is an application which you are applying if you are interested in analyzing the drugs. Okay. Okay. Ideally speaking, a person who is manufacturing a drug should have his own quality control laboratory, which we call in-house laboratory. Okay. Even if in-house laboratory is not there, then that person can get his medicines tested or analyzed by a recognized laboratory. And how is the recognition given? Recognition is given to this. Okay. And Form 41 is approval for carrying out tests on analysis of ASU drugs. And 42 is certificate for carrying out tests or analysis on ASU drugs use thereof. Okay. And again, we have Form 47, which is application for grant or renewal of approval for carrying out tests. And Form 48, again, approval for carrying out tests or analysis on ASU drugs or raw materials used in the manufacture on behalf of the licensees. Okay. Okay. See, basic difference is very simple. If you are a manufacturer and you are testing your own drugs, then it is 47. Okay. If you are not a manufacturer and you're just an analyst, then you have to go for Form 48. Next, we have Form 49, a certificate of renewal for carrying out tests. Form 50 is report of test. Okay, for giving a report also there is a prescribed manner. Okay, so this is found in Form 50. Now we'll understand what are the provisions of the Act. Provisions, in other words, the scope of the Act. Okay, so we can say that one of the provisions of this Act is Technical Advisory Board, as I have told you, ASU Technical Advisory Board. And next we have the Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani Drugs Consultative Committee, DCC, ASU DCC. And again, it has come here, see, definitions of misbranded, adulterated and spurious drugs. See, if you don't have a definition of a substandard drug, how can you say that it is substandard? You need to have a clear-cut understanding as to when you're going to call a particular drug substandard drug. Okay, so that is why it is defined. And regulation and prohibition of manufacture of ASU drugs, and it also tells you about the powers of the central government, and it tells about the government analysts and inspectors, those persons who are going to inspect your facility of manufacturing. And yes, it also tells something about penalty for violation. And yes, this we should not forget, we should never forget this. Schedule 1A. This schedule is seen in the Act, not in the rules. Okay, and this Schedule 1A gives you a list of 84 classical textbooks, of which 57 are Ayurvedic textbooks. Okay, now what is this list all about, and why is this required? For this, we need to understand how a drug is developed and how a drug is released to the market. Okay. See, natural in a natural course, if you see allopathic drugs, what they do is they come up with in silico approach of identifying the molecules, and they go on identifying the molecules. Okay, and once a molecule is identified, then they're going to test that in several stages. And once a molecule is confirmed about its safety, okay, see, whenever we talk about quality and whenever we talk about this, we always say safety and efficacy. Okay, safety comes first. Efficacy, well, it comes later. Now, it's quite ironical, but yes, it has to be like that. What is the fun in giving some drug which can kill a person on its own? Ironically, the person will be killed of the medicine, not of the disease. Isn't it? So, we need to have a constant, we need to keep a constant tab on the quality of drugs. And for that, what we have seen or what we are seeing is a drug goes through several stages of tests and examinations. Okay, and once a concrete molecule or concrete form is obtained for the molecule, but once when you are pretty sure about the fact that it is going to act in something, then you are going to test that on animals, which is called as experimental study. Okay, and after experimental study, you're going to go for studies on healthy individuals, and then on the persons suffering from a particular disease. And this is single centric, isn't it? And if you find that it is efficacious in diseased persons also, then the same drug is tried in different topographical conditions, okay, which we call multi-centric study. Okay, so multi-centric study also needs to be done, and only after that you ascertain the safety. You ascertain that there are no acute toxicity symptoms or subacute toxicity symptoms or toxicity of the drug or chronic toxicity of the drug, and then it is properly marketed, it is properly packed and marketed. Okay, so for this, it takes not less than 20 years. Okay, you might all be surprised with this, but in the normal course, it takes not less than 20 years, and it is felt very commonly. It is felt by the pharmacy people that of every 10,000 molecules which they come up with, only 2 will go on to become drugs, and they will be released in the market. Now you can imagine what an amount of effort or how much time is consumed, how much resources required for this, men, material, and money, spent on that. So all these things are exempted. You please listen to me carefully. All these tests are exempted if a particular drug is mentioned in any of these 57 classical textbooks of Ayurveda. So now you can understand it's a huge sigh of relief. Okay, you need not go on testing ashwagandha for acute, subacute toxicity in animal experiments, and then you are going to test that on individuals. No, that is not required, because the government has agreed, the government has approved that, rather the government is satisfied that these drugs are being used from thousands of years, so these are quite safe for use. Okay, so that is why whatever the Drugs and Cosmetics Act and rules say, we have a shortcut. Ayurvedic people have a shortcut. And what is this shortcut? It is the list of these classical textbooks. You pick up any drug in any of these classical textbooks, and you can just release it to the market without any initial or preclinical trials. Okay, it can be, but to be on the safer side, nowadays even preclinical trials are also being made, because you never know the combination. Okay, when you combine two drugs, what is going to happen? You never know. So that is why, if the combination is not given in the classical textbooks, then if you're making your own combination, then it is always better to go for experimentation or experimental study, and then other phases of studies. Okay. Now, at a glance, what have we seen is separate applications for each manufacturing unit. Okay, this is required. And loan license for those who don't have own manufacturing premises, or those who don't have the resources to come up with their own manufacturing unit. Okay, and certification of GMP and minimum equipment in a testing unit. So this is also a list which is given, provided you are going to have an in-house laboratory, then there is a list of equipments which you need to have, and that list you can get in the act. Okay, now let us discuss about some aspects of drugs and their marketing. Now, for any drug which is prepared, labeling is very important, isn't it? You need to label them correctly, and then only you can market it. Okay, so there are some lists, there are some rules for labeling as well. What are these? See, a label should contain the true list of ingredients with quantity. Okay, first of all, a drug which you have prepared should be labeled, and along with the name of the yoga should be there, and along with that you need to mention the reference. Why is this required? Well, it is very much required because you see in Ayurveda, a single yoga may be discussed at different contexts, or maybe dealt in different textbooks. Okay, for example, Chyawanprash. Now, Chyawanprash is discussed in Charak Samhita as well, and Sharangudara as well, and later on it has been discussed in many other textbooks as well. So which one you're going to follow? There will be some minute changes in the process of preparation. Okay, so for that you need to mention the reference. Another example could be Ichabedi Rasa. Ichabedi Rasa is rather the reference of Ichabedi Rasa is found in Rasendra Sarasanga, if I'm not wrong. And in the same textbook, it has been discussed at 3 different contexts. Okay, 3 different places it has been discussed, and you need to mention in which chapter it has been used, in which context it has been used, it has been mentioned. So, in order to make people aware, or in order to educate people, so this referencing or keeping or mentioning the reference is very, very important. Okay, then the name of the drug in accordance with the reference. See, if it is called Chyawanprash, you have to mention it Chyawanprash only. You cannot say Maha Chyawanprash. Okay, you cannot do that. Clear? So as it has been mentioned in the classical textbook, it needs to be labeled. Okay, and yes, it also must contain the name and address of the manufacturer. Okay, many times if you observe closely, there will be like manufactured by and marketed by. You know, if you see the label correctly, you can observe this. Okay, and if you have different names of manufacturer and a market person who is marketing it, then definitely it is some agreement of loan licensing. Okay, so well, there is another possibility. A single company may have two different addresses. Okay, it is marketed through the corporate office, and it is manufactured in the manufacturing unit. So that address will be different. Okay, that is not an issue. And license details such as manufacturing license number, it should be like this. Okay, or ML. After ML, the manufacturing license number should be mentioned, and the batch number should be mentioned. The date of manufacture should be mentioned, and I need not clear or make it clear. I need not explain this, that the date of completion of the process of manufacturing is what is required. Okay, quiet but natural. The words Ayurvedic medicine or Ayurvedic proprietary medicine, as the case may be, needs to be very clearly printed. And if the drug is prepared for external usage, then it has to be very clearly categorically mentioned that for external use only. Okay, this is with labeling. And yes, I was telling about the alcohol limit. And well, what is the alcohol limit? Alcohol limit of any Ayurvedic Aswa or Arishta or any other ASU drug is 12%. Okay, it should not contain more than 12% weight per weight. Clear? Except for two preparations, and those two preparations are Mrita Sanjeevani Sura and Mahadraksha Sava. In both of them, 16% has been allowed, because whatever you do, you cannot restrict the alcohol percent. You cannot keep the alcohol percent below 12%. Well, apart from this, I'll also let you know another practical aspect of this. Apart from these two, people also say, those who practice, even Pippalya, well, even Pippalya invariably contains more than 12% of alcohol. Okay, that is also, that's a practical difficulty, and I don't know if people have approached the authorities to make certain amendments here in this context. And yes, not only this, if the alcohol limit is more, then the packaging size will be less. Okay, for example, Karpurasava should not be packed more than 15 ml in a packing. One unit should contain only 15 ml or less than that. Ahifenasava, the same way, 15 ml. Mrugamadasava, the same way. And Mrita Sanjeevani Sura, for that matter, also must contain not more than 30 ml, and Mahadraksha Sava not more than 120 ml. Okay, now let us look into Schedule T. This is very, very important. Schedule T, GMP, where good manufacturing practices are prescribed. And why are they prescribed? Well, I'll just run through this because already I've consumed a lot of time, I think. So why GMP is required? Why they are prescribed? In order to ensure that the raw materials are authentic, they are of the prescribed quality, and they are not contaminated, and to ensure that the manufacturing process complies with the prescribed standards, and adequate quality control measures are adopted, and the manufactured drug which is released for sale is of acceptable quality. Okay, and in this, there are two parts. The first one is good manufacturing practice itself, and the second part deals with the list of recommended machinery, equipment, and minimum manufacturing premises required for manufacturing various categories of ASU drugs. Okay, the space allocation is very clearly mentioned here, and the list of the same for Unani drugs in part 2, and list of equipments recommended for in-house quality control section. Well, this is not mandatory, as I've told you. You can have the laboratory if you have enough resources or enough manpower. Otherwise, you need not have. I mean, there are a lot of government-approved laboratories where you can send the samples, and the samples are tested there. Once the report is got, then these drugs are further packed and released to the market. Okay, what is this GMP? Well, in GMP, the factory premises, it very clearly says the factory premises should have adequate space for receiving, storing raw material, manufacturing process areas, quality control section, finished goods store, and sufficient space for the office, and separate space for the rejected goods or drugs store. Well, there is another term which is quite popular nowadays, quarantine, isn't it? So there will be a quarantine section as well, only to observe that the drugs are kept there and for some time, and the drugs do not develop any untoward properties. Okay, least of all, the area for a manufacturing unit of Ayurvedic drugs will be 1200 square feet. Okay, not less than this. Not less than this. Of course, in 1200 square feet, it is very difficult to carry out all the procedures, but there are some manufacturing units which prepare only kashayas, only decoctions. There are some units which prepare only tablets. Keeping in view such small units, they have specified or they have said that the minimum area should be 1200 square feet. And now, GMP, in continuation with that, what are the general requirements? Well, you may all recollect the context of Rasashala, okay, where it is said, Atankarahite Deshe, Dharmarajye, Manorame. In the same way, the location and surroundings are quite important. That should not be prone to any contamination. The buildings should be proper, or rather permanent buildings should be there. You cannot just show a tin shed and say that I'm going to prepare medicines here. Then water supply, proper water supply is quite important. And disposal of waste. How are you disposing the waste? That is also important. Okay. Suppose you are preparing kashaya, you're preparing decoctions, and what are you doing with the leftover material? After filtering, it becomes kashaya, and that kashaya is marketed. Now, what are you going to do with this? That's a question, and you cannot dispense that, or you cannot dispose that anyway. So what people have found out is very interestingly and very intelligently, what they have done is these drugs, after kashaya preparation, what is the leftover material? That leftover material is hard pressed. Okay, hard pressed into tablets of very big size, maybe of Vanopola size, and these tablets are used for combustion in a boiler. Okay, usually now huge factories will have invariably the boilers, and for boiler, why a boiler is required? Well, that is also quite interesting. Why a boiler is required? To generate steam. And why? What are you going to do with the steam? The steam is passed on to all the vessels. There would be huge vessels which are covered with coils of tubes through which the steam is circulated, and because of that, the vessel gets heated. Okay, and what are you achieving with this is you are generating the heat at a particular point, and with that steam you are going to heat numerous vessels. In other case, what happens, for each vessel you needed to light a chula or light a stove. Okay, that is reduced here. Okay, and one more thing is the steam can be rather renewed. How? Well, the steam is condensed, that becomes water, and again that water is heated. Okay, so this with this you're going to save a lot of energy. So for burning, you need to have some fuel, isn't it? So those waste products are pressed and they're used. This is one example of disposal of waste. In the same way, you also can find different ways of intriguing ways of disposing waste. But there are certain set standards, certain set rules how you are going to dispose the waste materials, especially when you're using poisonous drugs in preparation of a drug. Okay, so your responsibility actually doubles in that case. And yes, after that, where are you going to clean the containers and stores, sufficient storage facility for raw materials, for packaging materials, and for finished goods. Okay, raw materials are stored separately, and the packaging materials like small containers or their vats or their caps and so on, bottles, and those things are separately stored. And after that, when the drug is finished, when the drug is properly packed and it is about to be released to the market, just before releasing it to the market, you need to store the finished goods, okay, batch wise, isn't it? So for that also you need to have sufficient space. Then the working space, sufficient space for the workers should be there, and health, clothing, sanitation, and hygiene of workers. This is quite important. Why? Well, you can imagine if you don't get food from a person who is cooking with unhygienic clothes and unhygienic conditions, what will be your plight? In the same way, these are medicines after all. For this, you need to have sufficient sanitation and clothing arrangements. And you also need to look after the medical services of workers, like first aid boxes should be there, first aid kits should be there everywhere, and fire extinguishers should also be there. And annually, you need to have the examination, medical examination done for your workers, and the report of this should also be stored, should also be protected. Okay, and well, machinery and equipment, batch manufacturing records, and these are kept in the office. Okay, why batch manufacturing records are required? Suppose in one batch of your product, suppose you are preparing a particular tablet, triple R tablet for that matter. You have in triple R tablet, it is going fine, it is going smooth, there's no problem. But at one particular point in some corner of the market, you find that you receive a complaint. Okay, so immediately what you can do is you can relate that to the batch number, in which batch it was prepared, and you can withdraw that product from the market totally. Okay, if you know the batch number. So that is why batch number is important, and distribution records is also important. Why have you, where have you distributed the drugs? Where have you, some units have gone to north, some units have gone to south. These things are also to be maintained very correctly. And the market complaints also should be recorded. And not only the complaints, you also must say, what have you done for that? Okay, what have you done for that? What is the remedy of that? That is also any record relating with that should be maintained there. And of course, finally, quality control. Quality control records are very important. I need not explain that. And finally, you see, so extensively we have seen the scope of this thing. Okay, and unfortunately, it is being seen that there is a shortcoming in this Drugs and Cosmetics Act. And what is that shortcoming? Legal experts are telling that the penalty aspect of this, or the penalty part of it, is not very clear, and it is not very, it's not proper. Okay, one recent example I can quote is from 2013, where Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they had funded a vaccination program among tribal girls in Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat. Okay, so this was later found unethical by a parliamentary committee. Okay, but you did not have the provisions for punishing them. Okay, when something has been done, when you don't have provision, well, unfortunately, they had to be left with a stern warning. That's all. That's all we could do. Okay, that is why they say the penalty aspect of this is not very astute. So, apart from this, about Drugs and Cosmetics Act, well, it is quite important. We all know, and that's there in your syllabus also. There are some other relevant laws also, like Drugs and Magic Remedies Act, objectionable advertisements. Like you cannot claim that you can grow height. It's very commonly seen. It's very commonly seen in televisions and all. But of course, if you bring them to the purview, if you give a complaint, then definitely those products will be withdrawn from the market, and those advertisements will also be withdrawn. Okay, growing height, well, it is a genetic aspect. How can you grow height after a certain level or after a certain age? Doesn't it? So this is one example of that. So like this, magic remedies, there is an act dealing with the magic remedies. Next, we have the Poisons Act, because we in Rashastra deal with a lot of poisons. We have Opium Act of 1878, very old act, this one. And we have Pharmacy Act 1948, and the Medicinal and Toilet Preparations Act, Excise Duties Act 1954, and the Factories Act 1948. Among these, the one IMCC Act 1970 is very, very important for us. What is the IMCC Act? Indian Medical Central Council Act, Indian Medicine Central Council Act, rather. And on the lines of this act, our CCIM, the Central Council of Indian Medicine, has been formed. Okay, so this is very, very important for us. These are some of the relevant laws. And finally, we'll look back. What are the notable points? The notable points of this is like the registered Vaidyas who prepare medicines for dispensing among their own patients are exempted from the purview of GMP. Okay, so those doctors who are preparing medicines for their own patients need not comply with GMP. Very, very clear this is. Okay. On the other hand, if you want to market it, if you want to sell it, or if you want to sell it to other doctors, then yes, you need to have GMP. Okay. And yes, drugs or formulations mentioned in any of 57 texts listed under the first schedule are exempted from clinical trials. before releasing to the market. This is also very important point. Okay, and well, this observation can be made. We can say that much of classical recommendations are taken into account before framing the law. If you see the GMP, if you look into GMP, you can very well correlate that with the rules of or the provisions which are given in classical textbooks of Shastra and Ayurveda in general as well. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of this session. Thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing. And if there are any queries, you may go ahead. Hello? Hello?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you, madam.
You have given an elaborate explanation regarding including GMP, Drugs and Cosmetic Act, and also so many detailed explanation and rules and regulations regarding the Drugs and Cosmetic Act. It was so beneficial and clear picture you have given regarding the topic, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I especially thank organizers and Principal Dr. K.C. Das for giving me this opportunity to present my views on this. And I don't know how far I have succeeded in this, because Drugs and Cosmetics Act is a very, very dry subject. Okay, and going through such a huge volume of book is quite tedious for any student. Okay, and even for teachers. So considering that, I have tried to minimize them, and I've tried to include them in about 25 odd slides.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. There is a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Under the pharmacovigilance guidelines, it is mentioned that for every drug, whether it is prepared by our own self, by Vaidyas, or by any manufacturing unit, it has to be licensed. Like that we have heard in the previous webinar, sir. But in Drugs and Cosmetic Act, you told that for Vaidyas who prepare the medicines for their patients with the home.
Yes.
So for Vaidyas who prepare the medicines for their own, the license is not required, like that it is there in the Drugs and Cosmetic Act. But which is applicable, sir?
That is what I told. See, we have some loopholes here. Okay. One act says something and the other act says something else. And we need to understand that pharmacovigilance has been formed. I mean, the concept of pharmacovigilance has come basically from the allopathic side. And well, you cannot see any allopathic medicine being manufactured or being prepared by a doctor or dispensing in their clinics, isn't it? So probably as Ayurveda was included in Drugs and Cosmetics Act much later, after about 25 years, 24 years to be precise. Probably in pharmacovigilance also we're going to see some changes in the coming days, and we may get some exemption as well. But see, pharmacovigilance, what does it say is, see, pharmacovigilance is all about noting down the market issues or noting down the response to the medicine. Okay, so response to the medicine, whether you prepare at your own level or whether you prepare at the level of pharmacy or by any other means, any adverse drug reaction should be documented. So that is the basic objective of pharmacovigilance, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so why is that done? It is done to prevent such things happening in future, isn't it? So as far as Drugs and Cosmetics Act is concerned, it is very clear. It says very clearly that specific license need not be obtained by, or GMP license need not be obtained by the doctor. Okay, it doesn't say anything about the license to manufacture. Hope I'm clear about this.
Thank you, sir.
Is the question answered?
Ha, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question for teaching pharmacies.
Yes.
Whether the license is required or no, sir?
A license is required.
For teaching pharmacy, no, sir?
Teaching pharmacies license is required provided these medicines are being sold in the market. If they're not marketed, if the drugs are not marketed, then it's not required. I didn't get the actual idea, the basic idea of the question.
Sir,
I mean, what do you...
Pharmacy, under the name of teaching pharmacy, in small scale, we are preparing the medicines just for Panchakarma units. We are using the Thailas for Abhyanga.
Yes. Well, right now, that is, well, that's a very good question. But what has happened is that is also being viewed in the same manner. Like a doctor is preparing the drug for his patient. And here, these doctors are, or rather the hospital is preparing the drugs for its own patients. So they're being viewed on the same lines. Right now, there are no specific guidelines related to this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the information. On behalf of our department and our principal, sir, Dr. K.C. Das, and from our college, we are very thankful to you, sir, for the wonderful webinar presentation. And I also thank all the participants and PG and UG students who have made this webinar successful. Thank you one and all.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, madam. Thank you.
Shall we close the session, sir?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.